was meant to walk back through that airport gate alive, arms stretched wide, ready to scoop his daughter into the kind of hug you wait years for. He should have been whispering, "I'm home." Instead, he came back sealed inside a coffin. And now, the reason why is finally clawing its way into daylight. This isn't just another tragic headline. This is betrayal, soaked in fear and dripping with silence. Late last night, an FBI insider broke ranks and unleashed a storm. Hidden inside a classified case file were a series of text messages, time-stamped just hours before Malcolm Jamal, Warner's body was discovered. They were short, almost casual. "It's happening. Make sure he doesn't leave Costa Rica. Handle it quietly." But anyone who read them knew these weren't reminders. They were orders. And the sender? A name the world never imagined would be tied to a death sentence: Bill Cosby. Once celebrated as America's dad, Cosby was suddenly cast in the role of a man accused of writing the final chapter of Malcolm's life. At the graveside, Pamela Warner stood trembling, a printed copy of those messages clenched in her hands. Her voice cracked, not from confusion but from fury. He didn't drown. He was drowned. By fear, by power, by betrayal. The reaction online was immediate. Hashtag surged. The name, AUK, Justice for Malcolm, burned across every timeline. Millions who had grown up watching him, smiling, laughing, believing in his forever, now faced the unbearable truth. Malcolm hadn't just died. He had been erased. His body was buried, but the questions refused to stay underground. And maybe now we know why no answers ever came. Because this week, the silence broke. An FBI whistleblower risked career and freedom to leak a digital file so volatile it shook Hollywood, D.C., and every corner of the internet. Inside were those same 3 messages, all traced to Cosby's personal phone, sent just 4 hours before Malcolm was officially pronounced dead. This was not coincidence. This was not concern. This was control. In a matter of hours, the man who had played a loving father figure on screen, the man who toasted Malcolm at his birthdays, was suddenly painted as the prime suspect in one of the darkest betrayals in entertainment history. The Bureau had never intended for the public to see these texts. But someone inside, someone who valued truth over loyalty, decided the risk was worth it. They cracked open a case the industry had spent years trying to bury alive. The messages were haunting enough, but what followed tore through the Warner family like a blade. When Pamela learned of the leak, witnesses say she collapsed. One bystander swore they heard her scream, "I knew it. I knew they lied to me." She had spent years begging for official reports, security footage, hotel logs. Every time she got the same cold line, "It was an accident. Let it go." They told her she was imagining things. They said grief had twisted her mind. But now, the world could see she had been right all along. Hours later, she stood before a wall of cameras, the printed texts in her trembling hands. Her voice carried like a blade through the air. "My son defended Cosby even when the rest of the world turned its back. And now I'm told that same man may have planned his death? No, he didn't drown in that pool. He drowned in betrayal, in silence and in fear. And if you think I'll stay quiet now, you don't know a mother." Within minutes, the hashtag exploded. Images of Malcolm and Cosby, once symbols of family, were now captions of predator and prey. Former castmates spoke out. Influencers demanded answers. And then came the whisper from inside the Cosby Show itself. We knew there was tension, but no one imagined it ran this deep. Cosby kept him close, too close. If Malcolm had ever spoken out, it would have been the end. Multiple sources revealed Malcolm had been working on a tightly guarded project, part memoir, part expose, aimed directly at the shadowy corners of the Cosby legacy. He had evidence. He had voices on tape. He had stories no one had dared to tell. And then, suddenly, he was gone. The questions became a flood. Why Costa Rica? Why was there no surveillance footage? Why did the coroner's report change 3 times in 1 week? Why was Cosby's legal team in the country days before Malcolm arrived? And perhaps most damning, Why did Malcolm call his mother 2 hours before his death, whispering, "If something happens to me, don't believe the news"? That voicemail was wiped from his phone, but Pamela had already recorded it. She's ready to play it in court. Meanwhile, Cosby's side stayed silent. No statements, no lawyers on camera. And in the shadow of those texts, especially after a retired FBI agent admitted they'd been flagged and buried years ago, that silence sounded louder than any denial. At the vigil outside Malcolm's childhood home, candles flickered beside handwritten signs. He didn't drown, he was erased. And Cosby, your hands aren't clean. In the crowd, a young girl clutched a photo of Malcolm from his sitcom days. Through tears, she whispered, "I thought he was a good man. Why would he hurt Malcolm?" No one could answer. Only her mother's arms pulled her close, shielding her from a truth too heavy for a child to carry. And this was just the start, because buried inside that leak was something far more dangerous. Malcolm's own hard drive, packed with voice memos, private letters, and a final message to his daughter. It was in safe hands now, and Pamela Warner wasn't asking for justice anymore. She was demanding it. Pamela wasn't just grieving anymore, she was building a movement. And now, the world had no choice but to pay attention. Malcolm's story had reached a point where speculation turned into proof. That proof came from an object never meant to leave a small hotel room in Costa Rica. A silver hard drive hidden under folded clothes and old papers, buried deep inside a drawer. There was no lock on it, no password, just a single folder with a name that sent chills down her spine. If they get me. Inside was the kind of evidence that could reduce empires to rubble. Recordings, legal documents, private emails, and one video file unlike anything she'd ever seen. That video was named after her. Pamela's breath caught as she opened it. There was Malcolm. No lights, no makeup, no smile. Just a man staring into the lens with the knowledge that his time was running out. His voice was barely above a whisper, every word weighed down by fear. "Baby girl, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I've tried. I swear I have. But I can't hold this in anymore. And I don't think I'm getting out of here." His hands shook. His eyes darted to the side, scanning shadows we couldn't see. "I've uncovered things about people I thought I knew. Things they've erased, paid to hide, buried for decades. And they know I'm finished protecting them. They're watching me, here, now. I'm not paranoid. I'm not crazy. I'm right." Then came the line that would haunt her forever. "If they get to me, don't believe the headlines. Don't let them paint me as reckless. This was no accident." The screen went dark. The room did too. Pamela's scream tore through the air, raw, primal, and so piercing that even the hotel guards outside were in tears. She didn't move for the rest of the night. She sat on the floor, the hard drive in her lap, whispering over and over, "They killed him. They killed my baby." When her legal team brought the drive back to the US, they bypassed the press. This wasn't gossip. It was a case file, a map of a murder. But word of its existence spread faster than they could contain it. The first crack in the dam came from a masked voice on a late-night underground podcast. His tone was shaky, his identity hidden. "I was part of the team," he said. "Not to guard him, to follow him. Every call, every step, every keystroke. We knew where he was, who he spoke to. The night it happened, I got one message. Stand. Down. It's handled." I thought they meant scare him. I didn't think they'd... His voice broke before he could finish. By morning, our Cosby planned it was everywhere. Old photos were deleted. Studio accounts went silent. Cosby's lawyers ducked the media, but the leaks kept coming. A former studio assistant dropped an internal email chain from months before Malcolm's death. One line was like a gunshot. "If Warner goes ahead with the memoir, contingency planning is required. Silence is mandatory." Days later, another leak. This time, a private recording of Malcolm taken just before he left for Costa Rica. His voice was steady but cold. "They offered me money to quit. I refused. Now it's threats and lawsuits. Next will be worse. I'm not paranoid. I'm prepared." The public stopped seeing a drowning. They started seeing an execution dressed as misfortune. Fans mourned. But those closest to him, especially his daughter, went quiet in a way that broke hearts. She spoke to no one, posted nothing. Each night, she held a photo of herself at 6 years old, smiling next to her father at Disneyland. Her aunt told reporters, "She whispers to that picture like he can still hear her. She keeps asking, why didn't they protect him? We don't have an answer." The silence from Cosby's camp deepened, thick and unbroken. And in the wake of those leaked messages, especially after a retired FBI agent admitted they'd been flagged and buried years ago, that silence sounded like a confession. Then came Los Angeles. More than 10,000 people filled the streets, candles glowing against the night. Pamela took the stage with the printed texts in one hand and her son's photo in the other. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She spoke like steel. My son didn't just die. He was taken. They erased him because he carried truth. But that truth is louder than ever now. Ever now. The air felt heavy enough to choke on. When she stepped down, someone handed her a single rose. She pressed it to her chest and whispered, "This is for you, baby. I promised I'd never stop." Across the country, murals began to appear overnight. Malcolm painted with angel wings, chains snapped at his wrists. One read, "Erased but not forgotten." The movement roared, and the courts roared with it. Subpoenas went out. Former Cosby staff were called to testify. One was caught at the airport trying to leave the country. Another admitted to deleting hotel security footage. A third confessed to receiving a $200,000 consulting payment just days before Malcolm died. People began to ask the real questions. What truth was so dangerous that Cosby would risk everything to bury it? And why was Malcolm's life the price? Pamela said the answers were on that hard drive, and promised the world was about to hear them. "Don't just cry for him," she warned in an interview. "Don't just post a hashtag. Demand the trial, demand the tapes, demand the truth." They thought killing him was the end. It was the beginning. In the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Every seat was taken. Activists, journalists, mothers gripping tissues. Malcolm's daughter sat in the front row, her hand locked around her aunt's like a lifeline. At the center, Pamela, in black, eyes blazing, stared across at the man she believed took everything from her. Pamela sat rigid, jaw set, her glare locked on the man across from her. Bill Cosby appeared unshaken, his face unreadable, until the judge gave a small nod and the courtroom lights dimmed. A screen flickered to life. From the hard drive Malcolm left behind, a file labeled simply Cosby began to play. The image was grainy, but clear enough. Malcolm sat at a desk, papers stacked around him like barricades. His voice was steady, but heavy. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone. They couldn't stop the truth. I made sure it reached you." A low murmur ran through the crowd. Pamela bowed her head, her hands covering her face. Malcolm's eyes held the camera. I admired that man. He gave me my start, called me family, and for years I believed it. But then the whispers started. Women telling their stories, crew members vanishing, hush money changing hands. I ignored it at first. We all did. Until one day someone came to me. She wasn't just afraid, she was broken. Gasps swept the room. She handed me a flash drive. Malcolm continued. Emails, recordings, video. She made me promise. If I disappear, don't let this die, I promised. And now, they're closing in on me too. The screen went black. For a moment, only shallow, uneven breaths filled the air. Then the prosecutor cued a second file. Audio this time. Cosby's unmistakable voice. "Make sure he's handled, I don't care how, just shut him up." The courtroom erupted. Pamela screamed. Cosby flinched. Reporters shouted over each other as security surged forward. The judge slammed the gavel, demanding order. But the proof was now undeniable. This wasn't rumor. It was voice. It was real. Outside, thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, chanting through tears. Signs read, "We heard him, and silence equals guilt." Inside, the trial pressed on. day after day, as damning evidence piled higher. Text chains, wire, transfers, staff members breaking decades of silence. One former producer broke down on the stand. "I knew something was wrong, but I was terrified. If you crossed him, you disappeared." Another testified she was offered $500,000 to talk Malcolm out of his project. Through tears, she recalled his response. "If I die, you'll—" No, it wasn't an accident. The jury sat frozen, the betrayal heavy in the air. Then Pamela took the stand. Alone. No notes, no legal script, just the weight of a mother's truth. "When they called me from Costa Rica," she said softly, "they told me it was an accident. My son could swim. He could survive almost anything, except a man who decided he was a threat." Her voice shook but didn't falter. He loved that man, defended him when no one else would, and this is how he was repaid, with silence, betrayal, and murder. The courtroom was silent. "I don't want revenge," she finished. "I want truth. That's what my son died for. That's what he left behind. He didn't drown. He was erased." When she stepped down, even the judge's eyes were wet. The next day, the prosecution rested. Cosby's lawyers called no witnesses, offered no defense. The jury took only hours to decide. Guilty. The verdict landed like a thunderclap. Not with celebration, with grief. Malcolm was still gone. A daughter still without her father. A mother still carrying a hole that nothing could fill. But the truth, at last, was undeniable. As Cosby was led away, Pamela faced the cameras, her son's photo in hand. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The crowd hushed. "That's the sound of silence breaking." She lifted her head. "My son wasn't just killed. He was sacrificed to shield monsters, but now the monsters are falling." Within 2 days, 2 major networks erased Cosby's work from their catalogs. Streaming platforms pulled his shows. Former co-stars issued public apologies for staying quiet. Congress called hearings into celebrity protection networks. Malcolm's story, once buried beneath fake reports and PR spin, was now impossible to ignore. His memoir, completed by his team, became a bestseller. His final video reached over 600 million views in a single week. On what would have been his 55th birthday, a bronze statue was unveiled outside the studio that launched his career. Not Malcolm the actor, but Malcolm the whistleblower. His daughter stood beside Pamela, leaning toward the statue to whisper, "You did it, Daddy. You won." The sky opened, and rain fell like tears from above. Justice had come, not in time to save him, but loud enough to make sure he would never be forgotten. They tried to silence him. They tried to erase him. But the truth rose louder than their lies. Malcolm Jamal Warner was not the victim of chance. He was hunted, targeted, taken. And this is not just Hollywood's shame. It is the story of every silenced voice, every buried truth. Because of a mother's fight, a daughter's tears, and a man's courage to speak from beyond the grave, the truth is no longer hidden. Now it's in your hands. If this story shakes you, don't scroll past. Say his name, share it. Let the algorithms scream what they tried to bury. But justice for Malcolm. Expose the truth. We won't be silent. Subscribe if you believe in real justice. Share if you believe silence is betrayal. Comment if you know truth always wins, even when it comes too late. They took his life, but they couldn't kill his voice. And with ours, we rise. For Malcolm, for truth, for every name they tried to erase.